Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Daryl Evans, co-founder of Yokel Local. I'm here with my business partner across the way.
Hey there, how are you? This is Stormy.
And we have a special guest here in the studio today, someone that has made an absolute positive impact in our business now for about the last 4 or 5 years. We're really proud to have an association with this gentleman, not just because of the impact he's had on our business, the insight, the wisdom, the advice, and really keeping us out of trouble in many regards. But not just that, it's really just because he's just a fantastic, not only fantastic entrepreneur, a great guy, a heartfelt guy, but he's also super accomplished. And so really proud and glad to have Brad Mishlove, CEO and founder of Catapult Groups, here in the studio with us. He is the business advisor that keeps both Stormy and I moving in the right direction. So for those of you watching and don't know our story, you can learn more about that later, but he's the one who keeps us on the path of growth, and he's behind better than 20 or so entrepreneurs' growth at this point in time, in addition to, and we're going to dive into it, several businesses that he has grown and sold himself. So Brad, welcome to the studio.
Welcome, Brad.
Well, thanks, Daryl, Stormy. It's great to be here this morning. Great to be at Yokel Local. Studio looks fabulous. You guys have done a great job with your new location here in Las Vegas. So
we appreciate it.
Look forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So we met Brad through a mutual associate, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't know if we got started working together right at that moment. I think maybe a year and a half later, we ended up in contact again. There was a mutual benefit and an opportunity for both of us to work together. And so we've now been in your Catapult Groups business mastermind and coaching program now since then. But Brad, before we do that, why don't we dive into who Brad is? And you know, I kind of alluded to it at the beginning that you've grown and sold two, let's say exited, 2 successful businesses. Why don't we talk about where Brad came from and what happened along your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, sure. Let's see if we can do that. It's been a while now. So let's see. I graduated school in the late '80s, '89 to be exact, and moved to Las Vegas, land of opportunity at the time, and I still believe that to be the case today. So Vegas has been very good to me and my family, and proud to call it home. So.
Nice.
I spent a couple of years right out of school in my parents' travel business. We had a travel franchise, actually. The franchise was in the leisure business. We sold cruise travel. So it was kind of fun, got to take some nice trips. But then the first Gulf War hit, and not a whole lot of folks were traveling for leisure for a period of time. And I decided, well, it's time to be entrepreneurial, strike out on my own, and couldn't find a good gardener at my house. So this was 1992.
I didn't know this part of the story.
Yeah, so,
I didn't know that.
And honestly, I'd never mowed a lawn before. So my wife at the time showed me how to mow lawn, which was a useful skill. So, and then I launched the landscape company, and it was hot. It was hot in the summer. Of course, I picked the summer in Las Vegas to launch a landscape company. And of course, you're outside, and I'm thinking, I went to school for this, right? I went to college, got a degree in business, and I'm outside, basically cooking.
Mowing lawns and cooking.
Yeah, I'm cooking outside. I'm cooking. I'm burnt to a crisp. I'm pushing things. I'm digging trenches. I'm moving wheelbarrows. And I took a deep breath and I said, either grow this thing or get out.
Right.
And I decided to grow it.
Right.
And it was a great decision. So for about 14 and a half years, I grew what I believe is the largest landscape company in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
Probably the 60th largest in the country.
Wow.
During that time, we also developed our own buildings for the company. We started and incubated a concrete contracting company, which we later sold, and had a very successful exit just before the bottom of the economy fell out here in early 2007.
Smart guy.
Wow.
Smart guy.
And during that time, I was involved in a peer advisory board. And probably started there around 1999. Spent better part of a decade really learning from peers and some great resources. and was greatly inspired by that experience, which in turn caused me to found the company Catapult Groups, which I'm running today.
And you founded that in 2007 or 8?
2007, I was actually delivering similar service for another company, and
right.
in 2011, we started the Catapult brand.
Yeah, so really, you're going on 10, 11 years now of running an executive coaching business, which we'll dive into here in a little bit. But so you started out of college in a place you had no idea, right? We talk a lot about the entrepreneurial journey and how sometimes we end up being successful in the least likely thing.
Right. So funny story, going back to that founding of the contracting business, I actually sold my car to fund the business. I got $4,000 from the funding, from the sale of the car, and then went and saw an old-time, very established businessman, Jim Marsh, here in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The auto dealer.
The auto dealer.
Yeah, we're familiar.
I actually bought my first pickup truck from Jim himself.
Wow.
It was really kind of a neat experience, and I bought it on time, and then I used the cash I had from the car to start the business. Doesn't take a lot. You need a lawnmower and a pickup truck.
Right.
So I had a lawnmower and a pickup truck.
Right.
Wow.
Resourceful.
Yeah.
Resourceful.
And we grew that quite a bit.
That's right. Yeah. It didn't finish with one truck and
it did. I think when I sold the company, we had over 70 trucks.
Right.
Right. But nonetheless, you have to start somewhere.
That's
and maybe that's one of the things is you just sometimes just got to move.
Correct.
Right. So you take a little risk, you move, especially, right out of school, you didn't have a lot of responsibility, did have a house and wife, but I with no children, no ginormous expenses. I made my own furniture for my house. It wasn't like we had anything fancy.
Right.
Matter of fact, I had a futon for a couch and an inflatable mattress for a bed when I first started.
I know that.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah. So
that's
you
good stuff.
you start from nothing, but ultimately, your business grows and it has real overhead and it has people, and people part of the business is the best part, but also the most complicated.
Right.
And then you have real capital needs, and you have to run great set of numbers and understand your financing and growth needs as you're growing a company. And ultimately, you're making that transition from entrepreneurial firm to professionally managed firm with an entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
And that's really where we spend our time specializing today is helping those people make that successful transition and then build their companies up for an eventual exit.
Right.
I know, Daryl, you've heard me talk about this. I think all good companies are built to sell. Whether you keep them or sell them, it's still good business to build them in that fashion.
Yeah,
so
right.
That's always the intention. Yeah.
Pivotal mindset right there, because I know Stormy and I, we've talked back and forth. We have no intention of selling, but the point that you brought to us was a good business is a sellable business, whether you want to sell it or not. And I'll never forget that statement.
It is, because if it's good to an outside party, meaning that it's a well-run company, it's a well-capitalized company, it's got great people, it has great assets, it has great customers, it's more valuable to an outside buyer, but it's also more valuable to you as an owner, because that's a company that allows you to have a company and a life.
Right.
Which I think is important, because many entrepreneurs are just buried in their company, and I don't think that's long-term sustainable.
Right.
So you both have heard me talk about that you have to have some semblance of balance in your organization, right, where you can work in it and then you can have life outside of it. If you're just buried in the business all the time, it's unhealthy, it's unbalanced, and it's not sustainable.
Right.
No, absolutely makes a lot of sense. There's been conversations, I think, just last month. You pulled Daryl aside. Okay, Daryl, when's your vacation? Where are you going? You pulled me aside. Okay, Stormy, when's your vacation? Where you're going? Right. Just to make sure that we are taking time out for ourselves.
I think you have to have periodic breaks. Without those breaks, your mind just doesn't start to see the opportunities that exist. Okay? Also, I think, and I know I've said this many times to both of you, but to whoever's listening to our recording this morning or afternoon, I think it's important to understand that it takes a series, perhaps hundreds, maybe thousands of good decisions to build a good business, and just one really bad choice and you can kill it.
I get the chills when you say that, because when you say it, it's true.
Yeah. So don't screw this up.
But go a little deeper with that, because again, the journey of growing a business is, like you said, it's a million micro decisions.
It is at that.
And you don't often see the benefit of those micro decisions until maybe 5-10 years later. But in the midst of that, you could make one.
Right.
And you really bring that point to life.
Right. So a contractor is only as good as his last job, right? His or her last job. It's you've got to progress effectively all the time, and then one bad proposal, right, that's accepted, you can lose enough money. You have some horrible litigation. There's a lot of things that can happen that are mostly preventable in business. Not all of them, but mostly. Where you have a de-risking, right? And that's important, because I think entrepreneurs are risk-taker by nature. Right. They like to do that, and that's how they build their businesses.
And we feel like we're invincible sometimes.
Right.
We feel like, I'll fix it if it doesn't work.
Right, but there's a question that comes into play is do you want to bet the farm?
Right.
And maybe you're betting the farm when it doesn't matter. At some point, it kind of matters. And so anyhow, just some thought.
Yeah. That's interesting. And so, with that being said, what are some of the problems that entrepreneurs face on a regular basis to where they should consider hiring a coach?
Well, I think there's a number of those, Stormy. Usually what happens is that the business outgrows the skill set of the entrepreneur.
Okay.
That they're really good at their trade, but perhaps they don't have an understanding in accounting or in human resources or the like. And so the complications grow exponentially as you grow your business, and it becomes more complicated, probably almost on a daily basis.
Right.
Having systems in place, a replicable set of processes, having great people in the business, and people who know more than that founder about whatever their specific area of expertise is supposed to be, absolutely critical in bringing that together. And then compensating them right, having them as valuable players to the team where they're able to contribute to the business, their ideas, their work, their effort, and build an organization that is levered in terms of not everything flowing through the owner.
Right.
That you have people in place that can make good decisions about the business. They understand where it's going. They understand the metrics, and that's a really important component of successful business, is having good metrics that the people who can do something about those metrics understand them and know what they are. So it just gets complicated. And putting those systems in place, taking the time to step away from the day-to-day and focus on what's important and what's strategic, kind of slowing down, if you will, before you speed up.
So let me ask you a question there, because going back to what you guys stated earlier, that entrepreneurs, we feel invincible, that we can do just about anything. How do they know that it's time? Because, they're used to coming across obstacles, and they take the position that I can handle this, I've handled all the others. What are some of the signs to
I think they vary by the business story, but oftentimes they'll have stress on their cash flow, stress on their people, stress on the ability to perform the services or provide the goods that they're committed to as a firm. They will stop growing. So the business will run in some level and then plateau.
Gotcha.
And there seems to be, for many entrepreneurs, a ceiling of growth that becomes difficult to break through.
Okay.
It requires a different skill set to grow beyond, and you'll have to have more and more talented people and systems in place in order to break through.
Right.
Somewhere in that $5 to $10 million mark is where that happens for most businesses. Some it occurs, at an earlier stage, and some much later. But somewhere in that $5 to $10 million mark is usually where they start bumping up against ceilings that require certain different skill sets, different systems, people, et cetera, to break through.
Right.
Yeah. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and of course, we've already talked a little bit about how stubborn we are and how we think maybe we're invincible. But you run a group, you have several groups, and then you do private coaching. What are some of the biggest frustrations you see with entrepreneurs taking, you obviously have a ton of wisdom and background and you're surrounded by a team. So let's not undercut those who are not in the room. You got a fantastic partner in Doug and in Paul. So talk about some of the frustrations that you find when you're working with your clients, both in group and in one-on-one format, because we'll talk a bit more about the Mastermind program, because it's really it's the thing that really takes things to the next level. It's not just business coaching. It's not just you one-on-one saying, go do this, and they go do it. There's more to it. But what frustrates you, or what frustrations do you see that you wish entrepreneurs would just stop and just do exactly as you said?
Wow, that's a tough question, first of all. I think what you find is that once you have momentum going in any direction, it's always difficult to change it. So I find that many entrepreneurs, they're moving along this train of momentum, stopping long enough to think about how things might be different, and be willing to make changes is hard for many, and it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah, that thing would be when you see that they need to make a change, you're like, just stop, and you can't get us to stop. You can't get
right, but because there's a certain amount of momentum moving in that direction, and then conversely, it's hard because oftentimes you're dealing with people, right? And you might have outgrown the skill set, or you're not providing adequate resources to your employees, adequate coaching, training. Maybe they don't have clear expectations on where they're supposed to go. They don't have clear metrics, and if you're not used to providing it, that change can be rather cause of friction for sure.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I know that inside the program, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about the sort of what is Catapult Groups and how does it differ? Like, dive into the structure of how you do things, because there's business coaching is it's nothing new. Entrepreneurs have been, they either get advertised by all the different companies out there, whether they're industry direct, but you've got some perspective coming from a different organization that you got started with as the chair. But talk about Catapult Groups, the structure, how entrepreneurs benefit. I don't want to give away the goods because I'm in the program. I could sound a bit biased, but talk about it. What's the real benefit, and how is it structured in a way to make not only the individual who's in the group, but all the group grow? Because I think that's the unique benefit.
To put a finger on any one thing, I think is nearly impossible. The magic, in my opinion, Daryl, comes from spending a day a month being strategic on your business, surrounding yourselves with like-minded people, all entrepreneurs running their own companies, so they have essentially the same job, different industries, different places along that growth curve, yet all pointed in the same direction, right? We want growth for our companies, growth for our people, we want stability, and we want to de-risk, right? Okay, so the magic, in my opinion, comes from surrounding yourself in that environment, taking a day off. And that's usually the area of the greatest pushback is, how do I take a day out of my office, right? And it's probably, I believe it's definitely the most important thing you can do is to take a deep breath, spend a day once a month, and be strategic. So part of that experience includes having some resources come in and provide workshops on various topics. So you're getting a business education, and that's, I believe, critical. Okay? And then listening to the experiences of the other members in the group and what they're doing, what's working, maybe perhaps what's not working. And some days you'll be like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. And some days you'll say, I am never going to do what that person is doing.
Right.
Both of those, I think, are good learnings. They're both good learnings. And then, entrepreneurs, just like anybody else, they have blind spots, right? You're too close to whatever the issue is to see what's going on. And so presenting your case in front of a group of peers, all under non-disclosure.
Because everything's private.
Right. And getting feedback helps expose blind spots, and it gives you perhaps avenues that you never thought. And so, Stormy, for example, in your space, in the digital advertising world, there may be a set of best practices, and you may hear something from veterinary science that's never been discussed in digital marketing, but makes perfect sense for your business.
Right.
It might leapfrog you generations ahead of what else is going on in your sphere. So it's interesting how diversity yields better results, but I believe it does.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm in the group full time. Stormy comes in for speaker benefits, but the way you've got it structured is one of the leaders of a company will be there, not the entire leadership team. But so I get the benefit of being there every month, and I'm like, to your earlier point, I think I've missed a couple of that once a month sessions, and you really don't you don't give me static about it, but you give me static about it, and you're
just
like,
a little grief,
bit of grief about it.
It's good.
But I do 4 years later, I do recognize the value. And to your last point, being in the room with companies that are not even like mine, you would think there's no synergy there, but they're all going through the same types of problems. They all have human capital issues. They all have risk issues, finance issues, sales issues. We all end up talking about a lot of the same thing. And I can't tell you how many times I've come back and Stormy and I've had a powwow about, oh my gosh, we were about to do this and so, oh, we can't do that because this is a risk and this and that. But I also want you to talk, you also bring in great speakers. Now, I think in my time of 4 years being there, our time being in the group, there may be 2 speakers that I think that weren't that great, but you think about a speaker a month so 48 potential speakers, and only 2 may have been a little bit less than average.
We have a bust every once in a while.
Every now and then, once in a while.
And they hurt. They really do.
But I got to tell you.
And you will give me grief for those for at least a year.
I don't give it to you. Someone else in the group is pretty good at the grief.
And we deserve it, for sure.
But
by and large, there are some really knowledgeable people that we have in this country. And to hear from those experts in such an intimate workshop is phenomenal.
Most of them are published authors. Most of them have done work with corporations and businesses that are far larger than ours. They've got experience a mile wide, and so it's not just the coaching, it's not just the mastermind, but it is also those workshops that you bring in.
Right. And I'm so thankful that this group of people that are willing to get on airplanes and come out to us here in Las Vegas, and come speak to our groups. I feel very, very fortunate that they're willing to do that they're providing cutting-edge content to us, keeping us with best practices, and allowing us to say, hey, how does that apply to my business?
Correct.
Because it's one thing to go to a seminar and you're sitting among 300 or 400 people and you're taking your notes and they're providing their content. This, you can say, hey, Daryl, pause for just a second, help me apply that to my business. And we have an interaction that I think benefits all of the members, because what's applying to your business probably going to apply to theirs too, but it allows you to dialogue in a deep sense, and I think that's hugely valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that's interesting. We realized from day one, from the very first meeting that Daryl attended to one of the Catapult groups, he came back and he was pumped up, and he's like, "Wow, Stormy, we're onto something special with this." And now we've been a member for how many years, Daryl?
I've lost count. I think we're either in our 4th year or somewhere. We're in 4 or 5 years, somewhere in the neighborhood.
So, we realized from day one that we were onto something special. So my question is, when did you realize, as the founder of Catapult Groups, that you were onto something special? Can you take us back to a moment in history when you realized that, wow, I'm really bringing value and I'm making a difference to some of these businesses?
I couldn't tell you what time frame it was, but I can tell you that every day I feel really great about the decisions that our members make, and that they're getting better results in their businesses. So they're improving both their top line generally and their bottom line definitely. And I think that's good for the entrepreneur, but I think even more importantly, it's good for the community because they're hiring employees. They're compensating them well. They're creating opportunities for growth. They're providing fantastic goods and services to the community, in some cases to the world, and they're partaking in meaningful projects. And for me, that is personally gratifying and super exciting.
Wow.
It really is exciting. I love to see the growth, the change. We're taking some really, I think, very good companies and helping them. We're not doing it. The entrepreneurs doing it with their teams. But we're somehow just helping just a little bit, providing that little bit of coaching, that little bit of, hey, have you ever explored this different direction, that I think is actually providing a stage for leapfrogging where they're at and into a better place.
Wow.
And then I really like to hear stories about how our members are taking vacations, because I think they're important because for a number of reasons. One is that it gets them out of the business and gets them thinking. Two, a business is more valuable where the owner is not having to be engaged every moment of every day.
Right.
Okay? So when they can step back and the business runs itself, and more importantly, it grows itself. And it grows itself meeting gross profit metrics and net profit metrics.
Right.
While you're off on a beach somewhere in the Bahamas, Stormy. That to me is good business.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
That's what we're looking for.
Right.
Okay. Now, I think, and it's just again my bent, you should take 4 weeks a year minimum as an entrepreneur. It's good for your staff. It's good for you. It's good for your family. And I think it demonstrates that your business can operate without you being there. More value.
I like it.
Wow.
I like it. And you do push that, right? It's not just once a year, but you always ask us every single summer what's going on. And it's almost like there's a part of the June meeting where we finish and you're like, where are you going for summer vacation? And you go around the room and you almost, and you don't give us grief if we don't have a plan, but you're like, you got to get some time off, and then you do it again around the holidays at the end of the year. And
I do.
You believe in it.
Right. I do. And to me, it's demonstrating one to you, but also to your employees, that you have a great company.
Right.
Okay? And hopefully your employees are getting the opportunity to take some time off as well, because they have somebody to back them up when they're not there.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah, it's important.
There's a number of things, esoterically or from the outside looking in, someone they've never done coaching yet, they've never hired a business coach, but they're that entrepreneur listening to this discussion today.
Right.
Walk them through, and I know you can't get into specifics by names and or numbers, but talk about 2 or 3 of the growth scenarios, or what could a business, and again, you can't make any promises about what the entrepreneur is going to do, but can you give and highlight maybe 2 or 3 scenarios of just stories that that have happened inside the group in the last several years? Not us, don't talk about us. I mean,
well, it's hard not to talk about you.
I know, because we're here, but no, we don't want to, but I'm privileged to be inside this private group because I get to hear the stuff we can't talk about in the public. And I know you can't really do some things, but just elaborate on a couple things.
So typically, an entrepreneur shows up. They're usually referred in some level to us, which is really just a great gift that we feel very privileged for that. And the discussions are almost always around some type of issue, although most of the companies, when they start with us, are running well. Okay? I have very few requirements in terms of what they need to be in terms of a business, but I do have a few overriding things that I think are really important. One is that I'm only interested in working with entrepreneurs who care about the people who work with them.
Right.
Okay? So they have to be employee-centric.
Right.
So employees have to be, I guess, first, if you will. So we're building culture around making it a great place to work. Right. So that's really important. Okay? Without that attitude, it's really hard to get anything done. So that's an important attitude.
Right.
Okay? I'm also looking for someone who wants to get to the next level, wants to learn, and doesn't feel like they're done learning. So I think that's also important.
Constant.
Okay? So we have some great members, and typically a member company is starting with us somewhere in that $2, $3, $4, $5 million range, where they're starting to see their systems get stretched. Okay? Sometimes it's greater than that, 10 million, et cetera. And usually we're finding that the systems are lacking. We've had many stories. Recently, we had someone join us maybe 3 years ago, and about the $8 million revenue mark. We're moving 3 years later, they're going to do $25 million in revenue.
It's amazing. Incredible.
Yeah. And more importantly than that, their cash flow is improved, their working capital is improved, and their net and margin is dramatically increased. So the enterprise value has skyrocketed.
Right.
That's exciting. They went from maybe 50 employees to a couple hundred employees. Yeah. So great opportunity for, again, the communities that they operate their businesses in and the entrepreneur. Right. And they've created opportunity for their employees. And I think that's an important thing, because if you're not growing your company, right, what do your employees do, right? So for them to get career growth in a company that is stagnant, right, they have to leave the organization, right? They have to go to another company in order to do that. Well, that's not good. You're investing all sorts of money and time and effort into training them, right? And then if you're not growing and there's no upward momentum for the employee, what's their option if they're growth-oriented themselves?
They're out.
Well, it's out. They're out, right? So we don't want to see that. We want to see people that can create career paths within your organization. So that's exciting to see. It's exciting to see. One of the companies, some of their employees are now moving on to within their organization to open new territories.
Right.
So they went from like some management level within one market to being the market leader in a new market. So creating opportunity. It's really exciting. It's very exciting.
That's awesome. That leads me into the next question. I was about to ask you, and maybe I still will, but I was about to ask you, like, what is it about the Catapult story that you love? That if we could go, if your kids were telling the story about the Catapult Groups, or people were in if business leaders are sharing their experience about the Catapult Groups, what is it about the Catapult story that you absolutely love that you can share with the listeners today?
Well, there's a number of things I love. First of all, it's great to have a career where I'm excited to get up and go to work every day.
Right.
So it's really fun. It's really fun. It is probably the greatest gift that I feel that I get is where the entrepreneur goes from a position of being stressed to a position of not being stressed.
Right.
And I don't know what the term for not being stressed is. It must be, maybe it's happy. I don't know. But having low stress, right? Knowing that there's people in your organization they've got it, right? That you don't have to be there and they've got it, right? Knowing that the finances are solid, that gives you a different operating point for your business, right? That means you start the day looking for opportunities versus kind of fighting it off, right?
Right.
So it's not fun to go to work every day and have to fight.
Right.
It's rewarding when you fight and win ultimately, but it's nice to go and look at what are the opportunities on the horizon. Where do I want to be in 18 to 24 months? That's really hard to do when you're under extreme pressure in the business, and much more fulfilling and readily available to you to go after when you have a business that is well run, professionally managed, that operates without the entrepreneur.
Interesting. Yeah. Makes a
so
lot of sense.
I guess to answer your question, that's what I really love, is to see the transition for our members to go from some position of stress to some position of what's our opportunity today.
Right.
It's a whole different attitude.
Freedom.
And that weight is lifted off.
Freedom of decision, freedom of choice, freedom of...
Right. So entrepreneurial freedom is a term I've been using lately. That, to me, is kind of what you're there. That's what you're in business for. It's where you own the business instead of the business owning you.
Ooh, that's a distinction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a distinction.
Right, and I think you've been there, right, Daryl?
It's a distinction.
You've felt that, and then you feel the transition. It's incredible, right? It's an incredible feeling, right?
Yeah.
And I think all the people who work around you probably can feel the difference too when you do that.
There is a difference. I mean, we think about entrepreneurs in general. I mean, a lot of times people end up in entrepreneurial journeys after being frustrated at a job, and then they say, I can do it better than this company. I'll go start my own thing. But then they just trade a job that paid them pretty well for a business that owns their life, like you just said. And getting out of that trap, it's not as easy as going to a job that tells you 9 to 5 what you're supposed to do. And then, so it's really that entrepreneurial freedom and having choice and flexibility. But
it's a great conversation to be having about not buying a job. You don't want to buy a job.
Right. It's expensive too.
It can be. It certainly can be.
It can be. For a lot of entrepreneurs, it is. If you look at statistics, 90-something% of them never get to $1 million in revenue, and and so we know the story. How many make to 5 years? It's like a very low.
So the percentages are low. The work is
a challenge.
Is hard. There are so many decision points, and the pressure for many is great. Alleviating that pressure is fun, and I think that's what we ultimately strive to do. So that's what we're here for.
We are going to wrap up, but before we do, last question. Most valuable business lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur and that you also pass on as a coach both individual, whether it could be for you or to your members. But what's the most valuable business lesson I think that you've learned and that you value as a coach today?
My goodness, I think it's one I learned a long time ago from a very good CFO that worked in one of my companies, and that's cash is king. You got to have cash to operate. So, and then
I've heard that
leads,
a few times.
Right, but that conversation, Daryl, leads to a whole host of conversations about structure, gross margin, right? So you have to have adequate margin in order to do that. How are you structuring things? Timing, people, sales. So it's a whole great conversation that dovetails together. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you've beat that over our heads. I mean, and you're always, some people on the outside, they think, why are entrepreneurs always chasing money? It's not chasing money. It's chasing the place to where you've got a business that isn't going to get set back if we have another 2008. It's being able to weather storms, which are just typical.
It's cash flow.
Yeah.
You have to have it.
Correct.
Right. You have to have it. You have to have it and plan for it.
Correct. You have to plan for the things that you don't plan for, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome. Where can people find you? Where on the internet, in the local marketplace? How do people get a hold of you?
Well, internet is a great place to start. Catapultgroups.com, in the plural groups. Catapultgroups.com, and we'd be delighted to have a conversation. We're always happy.
Awesome. Stormy, you want to take us out?
No, that's it. As always, I enjoy sitting here with you, Brad, because you're a wealth of knowledge, and just the tips that you provided today were invaluable. We've known each other for 4 years, and I get tons of information from you, and even in the past 30 minutes, learned even more. So it's great.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Again, it's great to be at Yoka Local, and thanks again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today, Brad. And everybody that's not working with an advisor, it doesn't matter if it's Brad or not. If you're not working with an advisor and you're struggling in your business, you've hit this wall, this friction point in your business. It's wise for you to get outside of the picture frame, whether it's Brad or someone else. Find someone else who can see the picture outside the frame, because we're stuck in it as entrepreneurs. And if you want to get past that, you've got to find somebody like Brad. And again, catapultgroups.com. We'd recommend him, of course. We're biased, but it isn't that we just love his company. He's had an impact in our business. So wherever you are in your business, hopefully you'll find that person for your organization. And if it's Brad, get a hold of him at catapultgroups.com.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.